It's a great pleasure to be with you again at this third regional community media conference for the Arab world. And it's an even greater pleasure to be part of this network as one of the co-organisers working with Community Media Network in Jordan to build Aswatna as a regional network to support community media development in so many countries that are in a process of change, development, sometimes very positive transitions and sometimes more challenging. I've been working, as Dawood says, for many years in the field of community media at the international level and at the local level. And I've seen this movement grow over the years that I've been involved. But I know it has a history that goes back to even before I was born. Community media, community radio stations first started in the Americas, in Latin America in the 1940s. 1950s and 1960s we saw a growth of this sector across the Americas, north and south. It was in the 1970s and 80s that community media really started to get off the ground, with community radio stations taking to the airwaves in Italy and in France and other parts of Europe. And in the 1990s, Africa was the region that experienced an enormous growth of community radio stations, particularly after the waves of democracy that accompanied various processes of revolutionary change, beginning with Mali in 1992, notably the end of the apartheid era in South Africa, which have seen community radio stations start up across the African continent with the exception of North Africa. And then over the last 15 years or so, we've seen this movement develop in the Asia-Pacific region, with new radio stations starting in Indonesia, in Thailand, in Nepal. Finally, the vast country of India opened up the airwaves for a slow process of developing new community radios. So today, we are part really of a global movement, a movement to give people voice through these electronic means of communication, to enable communities to speak out for themselves and to speak truth to power. Community media has become recognised as a third sector in the media landscape, recognised in international standards by the United Nations Human Rights Committee, by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Freedom of Opinion and Expression, amongst others, as well at the regional level. It's really come of age over the last 10 years, I would say. But it's only over the last 3 years that it's begun to come of age in the Arab world. My colleague Dawood has been one of the great pioneers of community media in this region. We first met and discussed it, I think, in 1999, when the idea of an internet-based radio station was just conceptualized. But it's only since the Tunisian revolution in January 2011 that we've really seen the growth of this concept as a reality on the ground. We've seen many new radio stations start in Tunisia since the revolution. There's about 30 radios there now, 11 of them are on FM, many others on the internet and hoping to start on FM. In other contexts, perhaps less obviously politically receptive, we've seen community radios nevertheless start in the gaps that exist when power is not centralised and when control is not absolute by governments. Notably in Libya and even in Syria, and I'm sure we'll hear more from our Syrian colleagues about the emergence of independent radio broadcasters in that country. We've been inspired over the last years also by the examples from Yemen, from Egypt, from Algeria, new community radios starting in very different contexts and building the hope of a real movement for a plural media environment that can support the genuinely plural political environment across this region. It's not always in a positive direction. Only last week we heard the news that one of the radio stations that the Aswatna network has been supporting was closed down by the entering into their studios of 15 police officers in the Kurdish-controlled area of Syria. But it was indicative, I think, of the growing importance of this movement that within a short space of time, both international pressure and local community support ensured that that station was allowed to go back on the airwaves. And that's one of the reasons that we're here together, to build international solidarity amongst people working for a free media environment and to support community broadcasting. I'm going to finish just to mention an important new initiative and to announce this. We've been working together for 2 years now within the Aswatna network. I've been working with Daru for 3 years on this project as a whole. 8 months ago, we pulled together the core partners of the Aswatna network, representatives from 9 countries, for a meeting in Amman to discuss some of our future priorities. And one of the future priorities we agreed was really important was to see more economic resources available to the new radio stations that are starting up. We conceived the idea of establishing a fund, and we called it the Aswatna Fund for Media Development. Well, I'm very pleased to say that after 8 months of work, we made a substantial